Welcome back to Sunday Vibes 1 and all. We're back in the pub to answer your burning questions. Today I'm joined by Christopher Hamill and Doogie Critchley because Patrick Van Straten is in the land of the rising sun, aka Japan, this week. And the question is sent in by Ricky Samosa, one of the best handles I've ever seen on this show.
Oh, wow.
Which side, outside of the traditional top six, has been the biggest letdown? Because we always talk about Tottenham's, Chelsea's, Man United's, Arsenal's, blah, blah, blah. Hamill, I've got Everton written down here for you.
Oh, all I can think of now is Medal upon a Rising Sun.
Yeah, that was a fantastic
what a
game.
game.
What a bloody game that was. Yeah, but Everton are a very good candidate for Ricky Samosa's question because they've been trying to become a permanent fixture in the top six, haven't they? For quite some time now, spending 457 million since 16-17. Just to give you some perspective, Spurs have spent 287 million pounds in that period, Liverpool 394 million, and Arsenal 448. And they're still no closer to realising said dream. And for the money, for the outlay, you'd have thought there'd be a clear 11 at the club. That's not the case. It continues to be the case. Not a lot of joined up thinking between management and the sporting director. And the sporting director comes with a very good sort of reputation as well, doesn't he? So it's confusing as to how they've gone about their squad building. I mean, their last three league finishes, 7th, 8th and 8th. In 18-19, they were doing fairly poorly until that run at the end, which really salvaged their season. I think one loss in their last 8 games, and that included victories over Chelsea, West Ham, Arsenal, Man United. I think the only defeat was to Fulham. So they finished the season strongly. Marco Silva had managed to salvage his reputation. They're in the ascendancy, and then they win 2 of the first 4 at the start of this season, which was okay, but then they went on a really bad run, didn't they? 4 consecutive losses to Bournemouth, Sheffield United, Manchester City, which is forgivable, and Burnley, which is perhaps less so. I think they conceded 9 goals in the process as well and dropped into the relegation zone. So Marco Silva, I mean, he's known for putting together a very competent defence. They were losing in convincing fashion and not defending well. And you know, to partner up with that, the fans were starting to accuse him of being too conservative. You know, he's stayed in his job, hasn't he, on occasion, by like the skin of his teeth.
100%.
And recently they've been a little bit unlucky. I think expected points actually has them down as 5th. And that's after the likes of Man United, City, Liverpool, Leicester, I think. So I think he is perhaps unfortunate to see his club sort of languishing in the bottom half of the table. But they're still 3 points away from Arsenal, aren't they? So it's all sort of play for still, inexplicably. I think 3 points. I think Arsenal are 6th at the moment, right? 6th or 7th?
I think Arsenal are 5th or 6th. Man United are 7th.
Right, so I mean, they're only 3 points
They're
away
6th, Arsenal. They're 6th.
From I guess, where they imagine they should be, where they want to be. I mean, you got a feel from this season, Marco Silva, he's lost some key players in the opening exchanges, hasn't he? And he sort of still doesn't know how to set up. They tried to move on from a 4-2-3-1, which, like I said earlier, the fans saw as very boring, too conservative. Playing a double pivot, at home at Goodison Park is not something they wanted to see. To a 4-1-4-1 with Fabian Delph shielding the back 4, but that kind of lasted all of 83 minutes before Andre Gomez got injured. And Andre Gomez was, whilst not putting up outstanding numbers, I think it was only 1 goal, 1 assist last season, he's their chief progressor, isn't he, through central areas. I mean, Luca Digne is their chief progressor down the left. He did the majority of the progression through him last season. But Andre Gomez, in the absence of Gay, is probably one of the only guys who can really take the ball through midfield. I mean, Tom Davies might be able to do that now. You know, he's apparently been doing loads of work at the start of this season behind the scenes. Marco Silva's got him working on multiple facets of his game. He's been doing extra sessions, which is good to hear because he has undoubted potential. But yeah, the new signings as well. Bamin, 25 million from Metz, out till January. Fabian Delph, constant hamstring injuries. Alex Iwobi had a decent start. I still think he's a decent signing. I think he complements, that forward line well of Richarlison, of potentially Dominic Calvert-Lewin, of potentially Cenk Tosun. Again, they're not 2-point men that scream Europa League, are they?
No.
So they've spent an awful lot of money, and the squad still isn't much better than mid-table, particularly given the injury worries. But I do think Marco Silva probably deserves a few more points on the boards. What are your thoughts?
I like Marco Silva, but he always feels like he's one game away from the sack. And I think across his career, he's averaged 52 games at each club he's been at. And he's about 53, 54 games in at the moment, and it feels like...
Get in there, Marco.
It feels like he's on the verge, doesn't it? Every single time. And every single time he's on the verge, he manages to pull a result out of the bag, kind of turn it around. Then every Everton fans stand up and go, oh, maybe it's not too bad. And I do have some sympathy for him. Like you said at the start, I think they've got the 8th highest net spend in Europe over the last 3 seasons. And it's a mess. The signings aren't cohesive. The defence still hasn't been fixed. The loss of Zuma was a massive blow without being fixed.
Yeah,
I think
Moise Kean now not in match day
towards
squads,
the back end of last season, their defence was fantastic. And now I look at Michael Keane and I think he must be looking alongside him and going, oh, I need a partner. Like, I need a regular, guaranteed fixture in there. And then I look in midfield and I think, who was replacing Idrissa Gueye? Were they expecting Mbamin and Fabian Delph to produce that output? Because that's optimistic. If you're going to let him go for 30
has been used as well, hasn't he? He's kind of a forgotten man. But
yeah, and now I look at Andre Gomez's injury and look at that midfield and think, wow, they are really going to struggle because without the ball progression into the likes of Richarlison, who's probably been one of their most successful signings in recent years, I think they're going to struggle even more. Iwobi's okay, and we liked him at Arsenal, and sure, he puts up fairly good numbers, or at least underlying numbers, but he's another player that you always feel is like on the verge of a breakthrough. And you look at Marcus Silva's on the verge of getting nothing's there, ready to go, nailed on level.
The players that they sold as well. So Idrissa Gueye, apparently they had a gentleman's agreement in January to let him go to PSG, and that's why they parted ways with him in the summer. I don't think the club wanted to, according to like inside sources. But they let Lookman go to Leipzig. They let Vlasic go to Moscow.
Yeah.
He's been performing really well in the Champions League. Onyekuru, who's supposed to have a very high ceiling.
He struggled with a work permit, to be fair.
Yeah, he went to Monaco, didn't he? James McCarthy, that exit was understandable. To get a fee for him was pretty decent. But is the talent they've sold considerably... I mean, is the talent they've bought in considerably better than the talent they've sold?
I wouldn't argue so, no. I think Lookman could definitely have been used. And Idrissa Gueye, I don't know whether you can force someone to stay, but you definitely need an out-and-out defensive midfielder. Like Fabian Delph can do a bit of everything. Andre Gomez can do a bit of everything, but if you lose that 6.9 tackles and interceptions per 90, which was the best in the Premier League last year, it's almost impossible to replace. And then,
but how do you replace him? Like they wanted Mbamin to replace him, didn't they? And he's been injured.
But then even last year, his numbers didn't suggest he was that sort of player. He's more of an all-round midfielder. Like I feel like Marcel Brands, their director of football, gets all these individuals, but without an overall structure. And their back four, if Yerry Mina or Michael Keane get injured, then it's Mason Holgate, then it's Matthew Pinnington.
Like Holgate has been okay.
Holgate's been fine, but I just don't think that's the depth required if you want to challenge for a European spot. And we'll get on to West Ham in a bit, and they've got a similar sort of story.
But had Sarri stayed, I think they probably would have got Kurt Zuma because he wasn't fancied by Sarri. I think they were kind of putting all their eggs in Kurt Zuma's basket, weren't they, so to speak? And they got to the end of the window, hadn't identified another candidate that was of the same level.
Well, then they totally panicked, didn't they? Then there was bids going in for like Marcos Rojo at Man United for like 15 million
pounds.
That was a funny bit, and like you look behind the scenes, and we rate Brandt like you said there, but that's not joined up thinking. To have a day left and to be panic buying Marcos Rojo, who has been an outcast at Manchester United for a long time, has kind of come back into the fold with injuries at the moment, but a better option would have been to go and get Chris Smalling, wouldn't it, out of Manchester United? We see how good he's performing in Italy at the moment for Roma.
And Everton would suit him a lot more than Man United.
And like that would have been more joined up thinking because he was available all summer. Why didn't they go and look for Chris Smalling or something
Going
like
in for
that?
Rojo is absolutely unforgivable.
It's
if you're
crazy.
looking for, a defender.
What was it, 30 as well?
It was close to £30 million they were going in for him for, and it's just...
It's a liability at fullback, never mind centre-half.
It really is, like a lack of joined-up thinking, no central defensive signing, not a good enough defensive midfield signing. Moise Kean, sadly, hasn't worked so far. I really hope he turns it around, and he is still extremely young, but I still think Richarlison's better coming off the wing than I do playing straight through the middle. I don't think Dominic Calvert-Lewin's up to scratch as a European challenging 9. I don't think Cenk Tosun is, despite him putting up wicked numbers in the Champions League before he joined Everton. I think they're missing that fulcrum. Like if they'd have had Seb Haller, you'd be going, ooh, Like now they are a more interesting prospect because Moise Kean hasn't banged. The two other strikers aren't really working, and Richarlison feels better out wide. I don't know. It just feels all over the gaff in so many places.
I think their spine's not been as solid as you'd hope.
And that was the case under Koeman as well, wasn't it? When they bought sort of Davy Klaassen, Wayne Rooney, Sigurdsson in the same window, and they had like multiple number 10s. And now Sigurdsson's kind of struggling for a real position in this side, and he was one of the guys that was, you know, heavily relied on in last season, or at least the season before.
But if I was Moshiri, their owner, I think you're further away than you were 3 years ago when he
hired Sam Allardyce.
Exactly. So I feel like there's regression there, and Marco Silva, even if they finish 10th, 11th this year, like that is a massive disappointment for Everton fans who are expecting this year to be the one they pushed on. So,
do we think any of their players are top 6 quality if we go throughout the squad? Luca Digne?
I think Richarlison is. I do think Richarlison in a few years will be top 6 quality.
Yeah, Luca Digne.
I mean, Fabian Delph does a very good job at Man City. I think he could probably do a job at Arsenal.
Yeah, for the money they paid for him, absolutely fine. Like, he is a good... he can fill, you know, quite a few positions. He's tactically versatile, isn't he? But
Iwobi would add depth to any squad, but he probably wouldn't start for any top 6. Well, traditional top 6, but what even is that now? So I think there's not enough.
I think if Michael Keane had the right partner, he wouldn't be too bad in there. Like he's done okay for England at times, and I think towards the back end of the season, when him and Zuma formed an actual partnership, he looked really strong. But this season, he's looked a totally different player. So yeah, probably just Richarlison for me.
Saying that, they are 6th for shots still, 2nd for shots conceded. So some of their underlying numbers are okay, and I've talked about expected points before. You know, suggesting they should have yielded more points than they have. So they've got Norwich next. I think if they get 3 points against Norwich, they move themselves up the table. The complexion of their kind of season changes somewhat, but then they've got a horrid run afterwards, haven't they? I've got the teams down here. So Leicester away, Liverpool away, Chelsea at home, Man United away, Arsenal at home. That is such a difficult run after Norwich. And I mean, if they're not a little bit more progressive or forward thinking, quite literally, in their home games, which they'll have to be now because Gomez can't play in that double pivot, then I don't see how they get results against these.
And that will be the end of Silva. Silva hasn't. He doesn't have any credit in the bank.
Yeah.
Silva.
Do we think he survives this run?
I think he could do.
I don't think he makes it to Christmas. Put it that way.
Yeah, I mean they've won 2 of their last 3. So if they beat Norwich, then you wouldn't expect that many points out of that run at least. So I think they'll get to January and maybe reconsider, but we shall see. But a manager even under more pressure is Ralph Hasenhüttl.
My, yes.
I mean, they're currently 19th, and deservedly so. I think only Crystal Palace and Watford have scored fewer goals. No one's conceded more than I think they're on 29. And you might say they conceded 9 against Leicester with 10 men, but still 20 would be in the bottom 3 for goals conceded. So it's not just that Leicester game that's keeping them down. And I think we were all quite excited when Hasenhüttl took over with his record at Ingolstadt, RB Leipzig. They got off to a great start under him. I think they won 4 of their first 6. And before that, Mark Hughes had only won 1 of his opening 16 or 17 games up to December. And Southampton were in absolute bits, and they recovered, finished 5 points clear of relegation, having been in the relegation zone when he took over. But they've been sort of slowly creeping down towards that relegation zone for a couple of years now. I mean, those days of Pochettino and Koeman, consistent top 8 finishes, seem like a distant memory. I think it was 3 points in 17-18 that they finished clear of it, and 5 points last year. And it seems boring to bring up with Southampton, but you can't talk about them without talking about the massive loss of talent over the last 5 or 6 years. It's like the Manes, the Van Dijks, English players like Lallana, Shaw, Chambers, Graziano Pelle, Gabbiadini, Tadic, like all these players. And then they got to this summer, and I thought, you really need to kick on Southampton now, because I remember when Sunderland were in a similar state, losing talent like this that would come on short-term deals, improve themselves and move on. And eventually, if you keep selling your best players, you will get drawn into it. And then they bring in Danny Ings, good signing, on loan last year, did the job last year, is playing very well, has probably been their key man this year. But then it was Moussa Djenapro, who's been relatively unproven. He's played well on occasion, but injured now.
Buffalo 2.0.
Exactly. And Che Adams, who just hasn't worked out one bit, for 15 million. I think there's 0 goals, 0 assists in his first 9 appearances.
8 sitters missed as well. He's missed some howlers.
Yeah, because his expected goals suggests he should have 3 goals and 1 assist.
Yeah.
I actually just think that's down to poor finishing, really.
Mate, some of them have been 1 yard out headers he's put over the bar, stuff like that.
He's had some absolute...
He's a young guy adjusting to the Premier League. Like, it's not not the best Southampton outfit to kind of be blooded into, is
No,
it?
definitely not. But you just
Because
expect.
they're relying on him straight away.
Exactly. But then you see other players coming up from the Championship in recent years, like Maddison, Mulpay at Brighton. They've taken it, Buendia this year.
Their squad is just horrible, man. How has it happened? The Vultures have picked and picked and picked.
Exactly.
And the quality's
dropped and dropped. And they seem like they're in exactly the same position that they were in last year now, where they're relying on Ings, Redmond and Ward-Prowse for goals. And they're relying on an ageing backline and some pretty mediocre backline players, at least in central defence, to get them out of trouble.
Well, I think for the last 3 or 4 seasons, every summer we've gone sign a striker, and a decent level
Although they did this year, they signed 2.
But Danny Ings, okay, look, I think he's got 5 goals this season, and I think 4 of them came in 4 consecutive games, didn't they? That's the first time in his career he'd scored in 4 consecutive games as a striker. And I do like Danny Ings in terms of a squad player. I think he's fine. If you ask him to lead your attack every week without getting injured for 40 games a season, you're asking a lot of him. Che Adams was a big risk coming up from the Championship, another probably squad player to start with. Like, I look at some of the players in the striking positions that were signed elsewhere. Okay, Moise Kean hasn't quite worked so far. Seb Allet would have done a much better job up front for them. I look at Joe Linton, would have done a much better job up front for them. And I think, why aren't they spending money? I think their record signing is still £24 million.
Yeah, I was going to say Southampton aside that can spend 45 million
Why
on
are they
Joe
not?
Linton.
Why are they not spending any money? Like they've recouped over the last 5 years upwards of 200, 300 million pounds. Where's that money gone?
Yeah, I can't imagine there's a club that's made more profit over the last.
Where's that
4 or 5
money
years.
gone? What did they do with the 70 million pounds of Van Dijk?
Yeah.
It's gone missing. It's just gone into the coffers. I don't understand where the reinvestment's been, because it's been null and void. You look at the likes of James Ward-Prowse, academy player, Højbjerg, very cheap fee out of Bayern Munich, if there was a fee at all. Nathan Redmond has been there for years now. The back line, Yoshida's still there. He was there in
Vestergaard cost money, didn't he?
Like
Vestergaard did cost quite a bit of money.
Yoshida was there in League One, still starting for them in the Premier League now. Like Alex McCarthy, or McCarthy,
Yeah, but there's plenty of players like that.
I don't think anybody in that team has probably, Vestergaard aside, who doesn't even start every week, by the way, I think probably the most expensive signing is Gineppo at like £22 million. Like, that's not good enough if you want to challenge for a top half.
But I don't know what
finish.
yeah, exactly. It kind of
It's what their
really
aim
confuses me what their ambition is.
Yeah.
Because it just seems to be surviving at the moment.
Because there definitely are some clubs. I mean, not every club can aim for mid-table, but it's just so disappointing of Southampton because they were there 4 or 5 years ago, and they've let this decline happen. So for Southampton fans that got used to being in the top 10, or at least being respectable, they're now 19th, and the stats suggest they should be there. I think they're 15th for shots. I think they're 18th for shots conceded.
It's not good enough.
And 15th for expected points. And I think they probably will survive because I think there's worse teams in there. I think definitely Norwich, definitely Newcastle, probably. But I think Southampton will probably be around that 16th, 17th area.
Like, I just think...
And then I don't even know, looking at their current squad, what their old business model of selling their best assets, who's going in? Who's going in for anyone? I think Ward-Prowse is probably Premier League quality. Ings probably is. Is anyone really going to make a move for Nathan Redmond after, 5, 6 years of... He's a great player to watch, but very little output. So I don't even know how they go on from this. It seems like it needs... I've got a lot of sympathy for Hasenhüttl because it was quite a progressive appointment, but it just feels like it's not.
He's getting a lot of
way.
flack as well. People are starting to kind of call for his head. And if I was him, I'd be getting to the winter window and saying to the owners, like, if you're not going to invest, like now that we failed to invest in the summer and now we've been pulled into kind of this relegation dogfight, then I will leave, or I will leave at the end of the season. I wouldn't really want to be there because I don't know what his remit is.
Yeah, I think it's the lack of, like, again, a bit like Everton, like clear understanding. Like, they spent 36 million on Ings and
Jennifer.
and Che Adams, sorry, in the striking role. Would that 35 million not have been better spent on one star £35 million striker?
But are they a hugely appealing prospect to go to at the moment? Like, what are Southampton if not
No, but if
perennial
if
relegation
Newcastle can sign Joe Linton,
strugglers at the moment?
Newcastle have a 60,000 seater stadium.
100%, but
they're
they're
historically bigger club. There's always going to be a pull for Newcastle over Southampton.
I'm not quite sure how they drove up the price for Joe Linton to 45 straight away at Hoffenheim. Was anyone competing for his signature?
I don't think so, no.
Because if I'm Southampton, I don't pay 45 for Joe Linton. precisely, for those reasons.
Yeah.
Because I don't think he improves the squad sufficiently enough to warrant, they could strengthen in a couple of the departments for that fee. So signing those two players fine, but yeah, the calibre of player there has just deteriorated, hasn't it?
The good thing for Hasenhüttl's future is that after that 9-0 loss to Leicester, everyone was like, here we go, knives are out. To massively improve performances against Man City, particularly that league game where they only lost 2-1. I thought that was actually a pretty good display, looking a lot more solid than in previous weeks. And in their next 4 fixtures, they've got Watford, Newcastle and Norwich. So 3 winnable games, and Arsenal away, which is looking increasingly winnable these days. So they could get a few points in there, get things going before Christmas, and I think Hasenhüttl should survive, because actually I don't see who's going to go in at Southampton.
Need a good January window, though.
Yeah, they need a big January, but they're quite progressive with their appointments, but I can't really see a top. Well, Hasenhüttl wasn't necessarily a top European name, but at least having a reputation. I can't see who's going to go in there in January.
They're so mixed, though, aren't they? Because they went to Mark Hughes, and would it surprise anyone if they're struggling in January, can't get any results? They sack him and bring in Allardyce. Wouldn't surprise me at all.
There's a correlation there, with employing Mark Hughes. That kind of matches up with their muddled transfer policy. They're always very kind of progressive with their signings, with their managerial appointments. It doesn't feel like they would have done that, 5 years prior.
It does feel like the recruitment's let them down.
Was it Pellegrino?
Pellegrino, yeah.
Pellegrino, was that pre-Mark Hughes or post?
He was pre-Mark Hughes.
He was pre. No, Claude Puel. Was it Claude Puel pre?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think it went Pellegrino, Puel,
Mark Hughes, and then Hasenhüttl.
I mean, Puel was. The Southampton fans complained that they were playing a boring brand of football whilst finishing 8th. It was similar at Leicester, that kind of whole story bias that is boring and but effective have chased a man out of the club. Which
it does
probably
feel like
the
recruitment has been the issue there, whereas the recruitment at other clubs, we'll talk about one other club now, I think West Ham. The recruitment of West Ham, I actually look at and think it's actually been pretty good over the last few years. Maybe not enough of it, but some of the purchases have been pretty smart. Issa Diop, Pablo Fornals, Felipe Anderson, Seb Aller, Andrei Yarmolenko, Fabianski. You can go on. Ryan Fredericks. The signings have been smart, but they are performing horrifically at the moment. I think
after a good start as well.
Yeah, and I think they're 16th at the moment. Expected points has them at 18th. I think they've got by underlying numbers, the second worst defence in the entire league, behind ahead of Norwich. And I look at that starting 11. I think this is not an 11 that should be 18th in the league.
No.
And that probably brings me on to Pellegrini as to how secure his job is. And I like Pellegrini, and he's obviously got a proven track record, but he needs to turn results around quickly because they've spent a lot of money, West Ham, and the owners are not shy of sacking a manager either.
I'd argue of these 3, he's probably underachieving the most, considering the
He's got the best starting 11, but he's got a howling squad.
Yeah, the depth isn't great.
The depth is not good. If Seb Aller was to be injured, no disrespect to Mikel Antonio, but it's a big downgrade to come in there. And some of his signings that we thought would bang haven't. Pablo Fornals being the main one. We were all excited by the Pablo Fornals signing, and he's still doing bits for the Spain under-21 side, isn't he? But every time he pulls on a West Ham shirt, he looks a totally different player. And I don't know whether that's because I'm still adapting to the speed of the Premier League or any of those sort of old cliches, but I don't know what's going on with him. He's got, I think, 0.2 expected goals and assists this season, hasn't got a goal, hasn't got an assist. Seb Aller is effectively carrying them through the middle at the moment. Felipe Anderson having a little bit of a downturn at the moment. Andrei Yarmolenko having a great time of it, looks way improved on last season where he's obviously injured and stuff, but the midfield still seems a bit messy, doesn't it?
Lanzini's now got a dislocated shoulder.
Yeah, Lanzini's out until January as well, I think. Declan Rice does a job in there, still breaks up play and just passes it effectively. And Mark Noble seems like the player that should always be replaced. They always bring in a player to replace him, whether it's Pablo Fornals, whether it's Lanzini, who ends up playing a little bit further forward. And then by November, he's back in the starting 11 because he's just a consistent performer. And at the back, it's a Diop. We think he's probably a £60 million defender, maybe. Man United came in for him in the summer. Cresswell, fine, does a job. Ryan Fredericks, fine, progressive.
But their partnership,
One of the best goalkeepers in the league in Fabianski, and they're 18th.
Yeah, but with their partnership last year that I thought was really solid was Diop and Balbuena.
16th, sorry.
But then at the start of this year, it was Diop and Ogbonna. I don't really know whether Balbuena was injured. He just seemed out the side. He's come back into it recently.
Well, I asked Matkins off camera. Matkins is our resident West Ham fan. He said that Ogbonna's just performing better than him this season, Balbuena. So I think the starting 11 is strong. The issues come with the lack of depth. When Jack Wilshere is having to come into your midfield, you know you've got problems. I mean, he's lucky to still be at that West Ham level, I think, Jack Wilshere.
And when Roberto's having to come in and goal.
Roberto in goal. Wow, worst goalkeeper in the league by distance, I think.
On his performances so far, probably, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he was brought in effectively because the director of football, and I think Pellegrini had worked with him at Malaga.
Looks more like a bouncer at a Wetherspoons than
and
an
the
actual
drop-off,
goalkeeper,
the
doesn't
drop-off has been astronomical. I read a report in The Athletic today with David Ornstein saying that the players have completely lost faith in him, don't want him to play in goal again for the club. So he might well drop down to third choice, and one of the youngsters might be promoted up into the second choice role. Because obviously Fabianski's out to the new year.
just cost them big time because he's always kind of performed really well in terms of like.
Well, they haven't won a game with Roberto in goal.
Yeah, and conceded 3 goals against Newcastle, 3 goals against Burnley.
So
he
bad.
literally threw one in his own net.
Well, since, I think, was it Oxford they lost to 4-0?
In the League
They
Cup,
lost to
yeah.
Oxford 4-0. I don't think they've won a game since, or maybe they beat Man United and then
I think they
won a
haven't,
game.
yeah, since the Man United win. But they've always been quite a streaky club. Like, I was doing a bit of research on them this morning, and in both of the last 2 seasons, they've lost at least 3 games in a row, twice in each of them.
Yeah.
So they go through these like really sticky patches. And West Ham, I feel like more than a lot of Premier League clubs, are quite like a temperamental fan base. I don't know whether that's fair to say. And suddenly it's like knives out, Pellegrini's got to go. And you got to like slow down, like think about it. You're not going to get better than Pellegrini. Like seriously,
Is that true though?
I just don't. Yeah.
Do you not think West Ham could attract a manager like a Marcelino?
Is Marcelino a step up in Pellegrini? I'm not so sure. I mean, look at his record with Malaga. Look at what he did with Man City. I know obviously it's difficult to judge someone at Man City because
He is struggling badly now though.
he's struggling badly, but I think he can turn it around.
I don't think the talent, like Marcelino is a very good defensive coach. I don't think the talent necessarily lends itself to his strengths. Like West Ham have better players. Their better players are in the forward departments, aren't they? Like Anderson, Haller, like you've said, potentially Fornals if they can.
But do you not think because of that, if they bought a defensive coach in who could organise that back line, the talent going forward would carry them enough to get the job done? I look at their defence and I think the talent in there is not awful. Like Cresswell.
Yeah, but it's not even Europa League either. I don't think like Fredericks or Cresswell are, or whoever Diop.
But they're in a
is partnered with.
relegation scrap at the moment. They're genuinely in a relegation
It's certainly better
scrap
than
at
that.
the
I think
moment.
the defence is very sort of lower.
It's about 10th. It's about 10th
to 12th, and
quality,
then the attack is probably what, like 8th to 10th.
Yeah, maybe even a little bit higher than that. I think it's better than some of the attacks that are currently occupying the top 8. Like Man United's attack is performing really well, but I think some of those players would compete with some of Manchester United's forwards for starting roles. Like Felipe Anderson would probably have a shout with Daniel James. Seb Allaire would potentially be in and around the squad. So I don't think it's outrageous to say that it's probably better than top 10.
I mean, Roger Schmidt is probably still available, like a very good attacking manager who's played that, a similar brand of football at Bayer Leverkusen. But yeah, I'm with Duga on this. I don't think Pellegrini is the best calibre of manager they will get at current. I think, if you're going to spend a lot of money and if you're going to sign talent that matches the philosophy of your manager, it makes no sense to kind of bring in a defensively minded coach to salvage a season. 12 games in.
Exactly, and he's so matched up with Casillas in terms of their history together. It feels like they've really worked together on the squad in the last 2 years. And sometimes just players don't hit the ground running as we expected. And Haller started very well, quiet last couple of games. Fornals hasn't really got going yet. And I think sometimes we're just so keen to be like, get these 4 players in and all will change. But sometimes it just takes a bit of time to adapt. And I don't think Declan Rice has also, controversially, played that well this year compared to how he played last year as well.
Although he doesn't have a good partner, does he?
Doesn't have a good partner, and it chops and changes who he's around all the time. But I just think maybe he's been brought down to earth slightly compared to last year.
Okay. So of these 3 teams, who do we think will end up finishing the highest? Of West Ham?
I'd probably say Everton, to be honest.
Really?
But That'd be
a damning indictment of Pellegrini, given the recruitment in the summer, I think.
Well, I mean, as we established at the start of the Everton section, they've spent a significant lump as well. So I think it'd be quite
They have, but the recruitment's definitely been better at West Ham.
I think you guys, Everton and West Ham will both finish around the 9th to 12th area, whereas I think Southampton are more likely to be 16th, 17th. I think they'll survive by the skin of their teeth.
Okay.
Yeah, I probably agree with that assessment. I think that I think Everton are probably better equipped to finish higher than West Ham, despite the sort of similar talent level. It's got very similar problems as well. I think Marcus Silva has only lined up with the same midfield 5 times out of 12 games this season. And obviously, that doesn't help with the Andre Gomez thing. I think with if their players can come back, these key figures, particularly around the aforementioned fixtures, then Everton might start to plateau a little bit. I think probably, 7th would be a good season for them at this point, wouldn't it? 7th or 8th, which is, you say that at the start of the season, and given the outlay, that sounds pretty bang average. So,
but there is also a lot of dross from sort of 4 downwards to sort of 15th, and it's incredibly tight at the moment. So a couple of wins.
Yeah, I think there's only 3 points separating like West Ham from like 5th to 18th or something. Yeah. So it is very tight all round in the league. But either way, which team do you think, outside of the traditional top 6, is underperforming the most in the Premier League? People at home will be saying, why don't you talk about European clubs as well underperforming? If you want to listen to them, go and watch Continental Club over on EFD. It releases every Friday.
We also do a podcast on underperforming clubs in Europe.
We did. Was that this week?
Now's the perfect time to plug it.
On Thursday.
Is it?
Yeah, it's changed podcast date. So go listen to that from Thursday. We talked about Real Betis, Napoli and Spurs. So you got some...
1 from Europe there. 2 from Europe, sorry. 1 from the Premier League. Go listen to that. Download link is in the description below. Moving on to quick 5 questions. The first one was sent in by Football Farquad. Are Leicester and Chelsea legitimately in the title race this season, and which one of them will come out better at the end of the campaign?
No, for the first bit. No, I don't think they're in the title race. And I think probably Leicester now, to be totally honest. Although Chelsea's depth in key areas in that midfield and attack, I think will come in handy as well. But I saw that Leicester are linked with Habib Diallo, who's played very well at Metz so far, and if they can get him in January, then you've got your sort of Vardy replacement. To be honest, I haven't seen enough of him to be able to say whether he's up to the requisite level. But if they add a bit of depth in forward areas, and Leicester, there's just such a good feel-good around the whole club. Same with Chelsea, but I think probably Leicester will finish 3rd, to be totally honest.
Really? I just think because of the depth, Chelsea might well take it. But it's going to be a long season. Like, people are already writing off all the likes of Arsenal. You never say never. Arsenal could jack Emery in and really put it together, because they've not got a bad squad either. I know that they're in bad form.
Yeah, the talent level is of the same, if not slightly better than Leicester's. Yeah. I mean, definitely in the forward department, that isn't a club that should be finishing below 6th, given that front line. Going back to the question, I think Chelsea's underlying numbers continue to creep up. Like, they are getting marginally better each week, and that is a very good sign. Because many people think that Frank Lampard is outperforming already. But 3rd for shots now, which is some achievement, given that they've had to play a very young forward line. Tammy Abraham continues to silence his critics. People are saying, we don't give Chelsea enough credit on this, and it's because we talk about the individuals as opposed to the team, isn't it? Like Mason Mount, I think, fortunately for him, Pulisic is actually coming up the goods, because his output slowed down somewhat. Still very useful in terms of creating chances, getting shots off from promising shot locations. But because of that, I think people are talking about Leicester as if they are superior to Chelsea. I think it's going to be extremely close.
Their underlying numbers are more like 7th, 8th, aren't they, at the moment?
They've gone up as well a lot, to be fair. But then they have had some massive wins.
Yeah, it helps when you beat Southampton 9-0.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly, which has kind of distorted the stats throughout the squad. Because before, I think Jamie Vardy's now just taking over 2 shots a game after, 12 games are we on? Yeah. Around that. Before, he was like 1.5, and he was on, I think, 5 goals more than expected goals would dictate. So he was on a really hot streak, and I'm not putting it down on Jamie Vardy. I think Leicester have been playing great football. They've got the outstanding creator in the league in James Maddison. But like, Chelsea are probably less dependent on individuals, and that might serve them a little bit.
Squad,
that might serve them a little bit better. Like, if Leicester buy a really good forward in January, that changes things.
Yeah, because I am getting tired of underlying numbers a little bit. Like, everybody keeps tweeting me about Man United. Like, I think by expected points, expected goals, assists, or whatever, United should be like third, and it's like we've been garbage like for a lot of the season. So I agree. I think although Leicester are flying really high at the moment, I think Chelsea might well just.
It doesn't necessarily expected goals can be slightly misleading at times. If you create, like, for example, in Man United's case, you might have 5-6 chances, but they will be very high quality. But you're not blowing teams away. And then if you're solid at the other end, basically, Man United's been very boring in a lot of games, creating very few and letting few and that will, shoot you up the table. So they're not everything expected goals.
Yeah, you've been very good defensively, and when you don't concede high quality chances, that's always going to bump you up the table.
Yeah.
But like you said, that doesn't mean you've been good to watch. It just means you've been effective, defensively speaking.
Well, coming on to that, Tamish Bahal says, can United with signings in January challenge for the top 4?
I said 5th at the start of the season. I'm quite keen on sticking with 5th. I think you're probably quite a drop down on Chelsea and Leicester in terms of your depth in key areas, and it really depends when Pogba comes back. Really,
so he's back after the international break.
When Pogba comes back, but you're still that's a lot of pressure on his shoulders. And with a couple of signings, maybe if you got in another midfielder in there. I saw you linked with Camavinga earlier this week. He's only 17 from Rennes. Probably not the signing.
Extremely premature.
Probably not the signing to get you into the top 4, but another defensive midfielder in there. Although, to give him credit, Fred, I think, has played a lot better in the last 2 games than he has in his entire Man United career.
Not hard.
Not hard, but slightly doing a bit better. But no, I think you'll be 5th. But it is exciting watching this new front 3 and how they're developing, because it's been really entertaining.
Yeah, the front 3 is, thank God Martial's back and Rashford can come inside. That looks great, and Daniel James continues to be really good. But now McTominay's out for a month with that injury after he got stretched off. It is a big blow for United. He's been our best performer so far this season.
And it's like echoes of Arsenal there, isn't there, where you just can't kind of put together a midfield that complement one another, and you're relying.
We can't put together a midfield, mate. We've got no players in there.
You're relying on your forwards to kind of do the progression and score at the other end. Fortunately, you've got 3 very mobile guys.
Yeah, we've got a great forward line, and our back line looks like pretty solid. But we actually don't have a midfield. We can't put together a midfield.
Have you got any signings in mind that you think would fit the bill right now?
I think United are going to struggle to get players in January. They'll be desperate to sign, I think, another striker.
Because rumour has it is sitting on quite a lot of money to spend.
Yeah, we've definitely got a lot of money. But, I mean, I think net spend was only 72 million or something in the summer, which is not a big amount for Manchester United, given that we sold, obviously, Rom as well. But I think
it was that Rom
I think we'll probably wait until the summer before we sign a striker and a midfielder in order to get a better quality in and at a cheaper price. Because I think United are going to go for a player like Maddison, for example. That's not going to be possible in January. They're going to go for a Timo Werner. It's not going to be possible in January. So they're probably more likely to hold off and accept that this is what they're dealing with, to go for the better player for the longer term than they are just to go short term like they would have done in the past, especially under Solskjaer.
It's a big vote of confidence for Solskjaer. Like, if he doesn't want to spend in January, then he is there, effectively, for another
year. I think he is there.
That's them accepting that 5th is fine this year, which in the case of their squad, in midfield, it definitely should be.
At the start of the season, 5th is fine, but then you see kind of Spurs implode.
True.
And Arsenal, very similar. And if you can,
I just don't think
maybe come January, if you're Manchester United, you reassess what success looks like.
Well, I think what we'll probably do in January, if we're going to go out, like I said, we're not going to get you Maddisons and you Werners in January. You're probably more likely, I think United might go and get Emre Can in January. That move seems like it's
not included in Juventus' Champions League squad. Not very happy with that, is he?
And I think people mock that move.
I think
as it's not a good signing. He's a clear upgrade on all of our other midfielders except Pogba.
Play a variety of positions as well.
Exactly. And okay, he might not be the most flashy signing ever, but if you're picking him up for the rumour, I think it was 18 million, 15 to 18 million euros. He's an upgrade on Fred. He's an upgrade on McTominay. He's an upgrade on Matic. He's probably second in your pecking order in midfielders behind Pogba.
And as Jurgen Klopp's midfield are displaying, like if you
don't have to be a superstar.
If you're confident in your forward line and they have those physical traits that they do, then just stick some workman-like guys in there that are mobile, that are going to get around. Emre Can fits the bill perfectly. Like, he could be your Wijnaldum, effectively.
Yeah, so I think you'll probably see United go for the likes of Emre Can in January and then hold off for the bigger name signings like Maddison and Timo Werner, etc. next summer.
I wouldn't be surprised if you, depending on how the next month goes, depending on how far you are away from top 4, if you just not sack off the league, but Europa League is your really big opportunity to get back in the Champions League. It could be in a month's time.
I agree.
And your record in the Europa League is phenomenal since in the last 2 years you've been in it. I think you're I don't want to get it wrong, but something like unbeaten in 17 games in the Europa League.
Yeah, very good in the Europa League.
Something like that. So
very boring as well.
Very boring, but you could, I mean, over 2 legs, I think United with a Pogba in there could cause a lot of damage. So yeah, I'd go Europa League.
Yeah, it just depends who drops out of the Champions League, really, for United. Because obviously, we won it, 3 years ago now? And it wouldn't surprise me again to be pushing really deep in that.
Yeah, there's
I
going to be.
agree with you. I think Ollie probably looks at that and goes, "That's as good a shot as me getting top 4 over the course."
There's going to be Salzburg in there. There's going to be an Inter Milan or a Dortmund, so it'll be tough.
Yeah, it will be tough. Right, let's get one more quick fire before we move on to personal. This one's from Fed Ganator. What does Spain's big 3 need to do to remedy their poor starts?
It's tricky. They all feel like they could do with a manager change, but
Simeone as well.
Well, it depends what you're going for. What is Atletico Madrid's plan over the next 5 years? Because they've got this new stadium. They look like they could be challenging this year, and they are in the mix.
Yeah.
But in terms of style of play, I don't know whether it's a time for a change, just to freshen things up in there. Like they're very tough to beat.
Yeah.
They can get wins, but are they going to? In order to win a league, the most attacking side generally comes out on top in a league season, is what I've sort of taken from that. I think over 38 games, you can't continue with being a mediocre attacking side, which is what Atletico Madrid are.
Yeah, you stand a much higher chance if you're...
Exactly. I mean, in cup competitions,
a
they'll
dominant
be very
side,
difficult to beat. But I think Atletico Madrid could do with a change, and I definitely think Barcelona could. I'd be surprised if Real Madrid did, considering they're in touching distance, and I don't think they're going to get any of the candidates they want.
I did see a stat though, and this, I don't know whether this is true, so shoot me down if I'm wrong in the comments, that Barcelona haven't changed their coach mid-season for 17 years. So
Really?
maybe he is going to last the season.
I think you will, especially as their poor starts. I mean, let's contextualise it. That they've all been poor, and as such, all have the opportunity still to remedy it.
Yeah.
So Barcelona's still sitting atop, aren't they? But Real Madrid have kind of chased them down now.
I think they're level on goal difference, separated by goal difference.
Yeah, separate. I think it's. I want to say 22. I can't think right now.
Barca just needs to get Messi back. As soon as Messi comes back, I think they just
he's been
walk
killing
away
it.
with the league.
He's been killing it.
It's a good question. They've brought in Eden Hazard.
Jovic.
Karim Benzema's had a good start to the season. Jovic
can't get a game, can he? Well, he started to a little bit more now, but couldn't. And who was the centre back they've signed?
Militao.
Militao, £50 million centre back signing. I think he's played 100 minutes.
Yeah, in and out.
Or something like that. Like, what's going on there?
Yeah.
Just can't buy a star.
I think if they get humiliated at the Bernabeu by PSG and scrape through to the knockout stages and then go out in the last 16, then I think Zidane will be under serious pressure. But as it is in the league, I think if they're in touching distance at the moment, as Chris said, all three have been poor at times. I think Real Madrid's performance has been a lot worse than their results.
And the longer Mourinho kind of hovers over that.
Although we can't
over
lose him from
Zidane's
Sky
head,
Sports Studios, he's absolutely killing it.
and the uncertainty around Pochettino, and he's been long linked with Real Madrid, hasn't he? I think you might see the managerial changes at the end of the season, and I wouldn't be surprised if Diego Simeone was the only one who survived.
Yeah, me neither. Right, let's do one quick personal question then from Ing Lionesses. What's your go-to drink at the pub?
Well, I'd probably go a lager straight up, probably like a Heineken, maybe a Budweiser, and then if I was going out, probably a rum and coke.
Yeah, you do like
maybe a
rum and
couple of
coke, don't you?
Jaeger
The
bombs
spice rum and
late
coke,
on.
though, isn't it?
Spiced rum and coke, yeah, only spiced. So yeah, I'm up for anything really.
I think we've discussed this before, haven't we? Because I said if you have a vodka soda, then it's keeping you hydrated while still getting simultaneously shit-faced.
Better for the hangover.
Yeah, so you're nursing the hangover already. It's preemptive thinking. But yeah, I do enjoy a bloody lager. Bit of lager top every now and then if the weather permits. A bit of lemonade in there. Summer's here, boys. Go on a night out. Yeah, vodka soda lime.
Really?
On a weekend, I could do a Bloody Mary.
Do you like a whiskey as well? What's your cocktail of choice? Because an old fashioned absolutely bangs.
Sex on the beach, probably.
I think a mojito.
You slut.
I just keep simple with a mojito, but yeah, I agree. I think we're all quite simple taste, aren't we?
Do you guys like espresso martinis?
Yeah.
So I've got into them in the last year.
So have I.
Big
Cracking.
On the Halloween do.
On the Halloween do.
He walks up to me, takes a sip of my espresso martini, goes, "Caw!" And I just see like 2 minutes later, dual wielding like akimbo.
I know, akimbo espresso martinis, and they didn't have the espresso martini glasses, so I just had them in half pint glasses. Exceptional scenes. But yeah, there we have have it. That's all for this week's episode of Sunday Vibes. If you want to get your question answered next week, slap it in the comments below or just tweet it to us midway during the week. I think we usually put the tweet out on a Wednesday. If you want to download the Sunday Vibes Extra Time podcast, where we're talking about underperforming European teams, then click the link in the top of the description. Anything else to plug?
Go over to Eurofootball Daily, check out all the stat wars, the leagues. The competition is hotting up. We're going into our final 2 fixtures. And there's relegation, there's title challenges, it's potentially going down. It's getting tight.
Crikey.
This is a Red Football Social.
International break.
Of
International
course.
break. Come on, we're not got our heads screwed on this morning. If you're not a member, if you're not a subscriber, sorry, of Football Daily Premier League, then please head on over there now. We might do a membership scheme. Why not?
Let's do it. Merch.
Bye.